Hello, I'm Robert, fact checker and science blogger for the Doomsday Debunked group on Facebook, where we help people scared of many things. And this time it's about just what has happened, what has just happened on Congress, a sort of confusion and bewilderment about it. So the main thing is, it's all over now. Pence declared the count accurately, as expected, 306 votes to 238. It's extraordinary that he was expected by Trump to do anything else than just declare the vote. The Vice President has no constitutional authority to overturn the votes that have been counted in Congress when he was presiding over it. And that is how it should be. Because if the Vice President could just, from his own personal views, decide what the vote count should be for the election every 4 years, there'd be absolute chaos. I mean, it would just depend on the whims of whoever you had as the Vice President that year. It just can't be like that. He was just the person counting the votes, and that's all, in the Senate, and then it was also counted separately in Congress, and they both came to the same count, and that was the end of the process. Both for Biden and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they are both completely confirmed, gone through all the formal process. There's nothing else to do except the inauguration. Both had the same vote count, and all that's left is the inauguration on the 20th of January. There were no faithless voters. Trump has said that there will be an orderly transition on the 20th of January. This is the first time he said this with clarity. But even then, he repeated his claims, his false claims, that the election has been stolen. I say it's false because the United States is run by the rule of law. Allegations are not counted. You can't just accuse someone of something just because you think that it's that what you say is true. That is never accepted as being established if you just allege something. In the United States, it has to go through the legal system, and if you keep on asserting something but you don't go through the legal system, or all your legal attempts have failed, then it's not accepted as being a truth. It's not accepted as being the legal decision. So, in that sense, it was a false. What he's saying is false. It's not true, not in the legal sense. There's no legal basis for it at all. And he had all the time that was needed to make those legal cases until 14th of December, and that's how it has to be in a constitution. There has to be an end date for legal processes for a vote count. Otherwise, again, you could have people arguing years later that the election, there could, for instance, have been Clinton supporters arguing that the 2016 election was not correct, and that could have just gone on and on and on without any end date. It just has to be like that. And then you have the formal process in Congress, and this could be for something like a faithless elector or something like that. So you have this process where during the Congress, then they can raise objections, and it has mainly been used just as a platform for putting forward political views in a kind of formal protest, in which the people who make these objections know that there's no possibility of the objection being accepted, and that's what happened this time. And so lots of political speeches, but none of the objections were upheld because there was a majority vote against in both houses, and for it to be accepted there has to be a majority vote in both houses to accept the challenge to the electoral votes as counted in the Congress. So that's what's happened. That's all over. There's nothing else can be done. Biden is the next president. Kamala Harris is the next vice president, and the transition happens on the 20th of January. There are not even any more formalities left. Right. So then, Trump falsely claimed that Pence could change the election results in Congress. And I say no constitutional scholars are saying that. and he told them to go to the capital to protest. And then that protest all took off when the protesters, Pence wrote a letter, which I'm not sure, I don't think I've got it here, but I've got it in my longer debunk. Anyway, yes, no, I don't think I've got it here, but Pence Pence wrote a letter explaining that he looked carefully at the Constitution and that he doesn't have the constitutional authority as a Vice President to change the Electoral College votes, and that is why he can't do what Trump asked him to do. And this is the situation in the United States, that the politicians there, they consider the Constitution as really above everything. It's a little bit, in the United Kingdom, we don't have a written constitution, and we think of all the authority of government as coming from the Queen, which to people in the United States seems very bizarre. And then in the United States, they think of all the authority as coming from the Constitution and the framers of the Constitution, but actually the written text of the Constitution. And so there's no way that they're going to go against the Constitution, the written Constitution. And so it really is very extraordinary to go against the Constitution. And so Pence, although he is very loyal to Trump, and he has been all the way through as Vice President, all the way through every twist and turn, whatever Trump did, he followed him. But he is not going to follow Trump against the Constitution. And I never expected that. He's a very clear follower of the Constitution, always has been. So this shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. And then Biden, so then when he said that, then these followers of Trump, who clearly don't understand the Constitution very well, and it's not surprising, it's immensely complex, and Trump had misled them about it, the way it's interpreted. And so they charged on the Capitol Hill. When they heard that Pence is not going to overturn the Constitution, they saw that as him supporting stealing the vote, and so they all boiled over, and then the protesters went into the Capitol. And then the very extraordinary thing here is that there weren't enough police to defend the Capitol, and this is something that's sure to be an inquiry about. And the reason is, at least in part, is that Trump was responsible for saying that they should add extra National Guard to defend the Capitol, and he didn't give that instruction. And eventually Pence gave that instruction, and they arrived, but they arrived rather too late, and the protesters were already inside. The police, some people have sort of said questions about the police. I thought they were very professional. They did the right thing. I've just read it, looked a bit about how training for policemen and so on, and they did the right thing. They didn't confront them. They let them into the building because they would have assessed on the spot that they didn't have enough people to stop them. In that situation, you don't confront them. That can lead to shootings and things, especially in the United States, where you have guns and people dying. So they let them go wherever they liked inside, but they made sure that the people inside who it was their duty to protect, they found safe rooms for them. And then they protected those safe rooms. And then the one death, I think, was very likely due to the policeman protecting a safe room from protesters with guns, because some of the protesters had guns. So the police, as far as I could tell, just from watching the videos, they behaved impeccably. They did a very professional job. And then 3 of the protesters died falling off the outside of the building. Or things like that. It hasn't actually been said, but there was at least one report of someone falling off the scaffolding. They were clambering around the outside. Scaffolding is not a good place to be if you don't know how to climb scaffolding. It's very easy to fall off scaffolding. The workers, builders, make it look so easy going up and down, but they know what they're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it's dangerous climbing scaffolding. And then others were clambering around the outside of buildings, and you get these brave, they're not brave, you get these professional people who climb up buildings. You get people who are trained as rock climbers and who clamber up buildings. They make it look so easy, but that is also very, very dangerous for anyone who is not professional or not trained as a rock climber. So it's no wonder that some of them fell off. So anyway, as expected, Pence strongly condemned the violence, and he was really rather emotional. He was sort of, taking these long, these big breaths that people do when they're quite emotional about something, and you could tell from his face. It was quite a difficult time for him, I think. And this is the extraordinary scene of, for those of you who don't know U.S. history, the Confederate flag that this chap is carrying into the capital of all places is the flag that slave owners used in fighting the southern states in the US Civil War. And at present it is the flag that is used mostly by white supremacists. And then there were even neo-Nazis and someone saying Camp Auschwitz on his shirt. I mean, really appalling, extraordinary things going in. So I want to make it very clear that, of course, these are not representative of Trump, so the many people I help were Trump supporters. So being a Trump supporter, being someone who's keen on Trump, doesn't mean that you support this. So please don't take that lesson away from this. Don't think that this is representative of Trump supporters. But I think it was very wrong of Trump to not denounce this, and totally appropriate for Pence to say we condemn the violence that took place here in the strongest possible terms. But then you look at what Trump said, and he said, we love you, you've been very special, you've seen what happened, you see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. And so Trump has still, as the point of which I'm saying this, he has not said a word against the people who stormed the Capitol. And if you are in the United Kingdom, you mightn't quite appreciate quite what it's like, what it is for Americans, for them to storm the Capitol. For us it's more like them storming the Queen's bedroom in Buckingham Palace or something. That's what it's like for an American, for them to be storming the Capitol. We don't quite think of the House of Parliament in quite the same way as they do. And so it's really a very, very extraordinary thing for Americans. They got very emotional about it. And it's no wonder that even many Republicans said, Trump, you've gone too far. This is absolutely wrong. Because they have no question about it. It was Trump inciting these protesters that led to them storming the Capitol. And it's a bit like someone carrying Nazi flags into the Queen's bedroom in the United Kingdom. Of course people would be very worked up about that. And so it's no wonder that the same has happened in the United States, and I'm doing this to help. Some people in our group have got very upset about it both ways, and it's no wonder. The American people in America will be reading about this in their history books centuries from now. Just nothing like this ever happened before. And so I got the full transcript of Trump's video, and YouTube have a policy. They took down the video, but they said it's okay for anyone to upload Trump's video so long as they put it in context and they don't just have the video on its own. So I think it's okay to show the transcript just briefly on the screen like that. So you can read it if you like, and I won't read it out, but there's it on the screen if you want to pause and read it, or you can go through the link in the link description. And then this is Pence's full transcript of what he said to we condemn the violence that took place here in the strongest possible terms. We grieve the loss of life in his household as well as the injuries suffered by those who defended our capital today, and we will always be grateful to the men and women who stayed at posts to defend this historic place. To those who wreaked havoc in our capital today, you did not win. Violence never wins. Freedom wins. This is still the people's house, and as we reconvene in this chamber, the world will again witness the resilience and strength of our democracy. For even in the wake of unprecedented violence and vandalism at this capital, the elected representatives of the people of the United States have assembled again on the very same day to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. The United States, why did I say United States? I don't know. Funny thing I do. So may God bless the lost, the injured, and the heroes forged on this day, May God bless all who served here and those who protect this place. May God bless the United States of America. Let's go back to work. That's what Pence said. And I think most Republicans will be with Pence there. And they're just wondering, why hasn't Trump said the same? And this is why they are actually considering, can Trump be removed from office? I think if Trump was to condemn what happened and condemn it very clearly and say this was wrong and that his supporters should not have stormed the Capitol, that they did the wrong thing there, then they wouldn't have the same question about whether Trump can be removed from office. But right now, as I'm speaking, the Cabinet are meeting to consider invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. Now, we get some things saying, not explaining things quite properly to you. So, if I understand right, then although it takes a two-thirds supermajority in both houses and a well-supporter like Pence to actually remove him from office, it doesn't require very much at all to start the process. To start the process, it needs the majority of the Cabinet, which is 23 people, and so we need a majority of that, so that would be 12 people in the Cabinet and Mike Pence. If those 13 people decide to start the process, then from that very moment, then Trump no longer has any presidential powers. And then they have up to 21 days to complete the process. And this can be done even if Trump doesn't agree, so long as they invoke, I think it's clause 4, which is the one that you invoke if you think, for instance, that the president is of unsound mind. And if there are no actual conditions or tests, you just have to say you're invoking that particular clause in the 25th Amendment. And then if you do that, then from that moment on, as soon as, and then they go and report that to Congress and say this is needed, this is what we're doing. And from the moment that they give the report to Congress, then from then on, Trump no longer has any presidential powers. And so this can be done as a procedural method. So this is to reassure you, if there is any real concern that there are any more problems going to happen between now and the 20th. So that's what they're meeting to discuss, really. And I don't think it's very likely it's going to happen to be a very major thing for them to do this. But if those 13 people decide that it has reached that bar where there's a major concern of something like this happening again in the next 12 days, then they can invoke the 25th Amendment, and then from then on, Trump no longer has any presidential powers. And then they have 21 days to complete this process, and that would take to beyond Joe Biden's inauguration. It's extraordinary that this is even being discussed, and it is, at the highest level. Now, the protesters, of course, have their First Amendment right in the United States to peaceful protest, but you don't have First Amendment rights to storm the Capitol and carry the Confederate flag through the Capitol and then break down windows and things like that. That is not. You don't have that. That's not a First Amendment right. And these people are bound to be prosecuted. And there'll be lots of cases going through the courts looking at these people and what they did. And then there'll be legal processes about them because what they did is very illegal. So I would imagine it'd be mainly the ringleaders that they focus on, but that's definitely going to be a legal process because what it is very illegal in the United States. So what happens next? There's nothing more to be done as far as the process of declaring Biden the president-elect. It's all over now. And there may well be more protests, but that was the big day. And they were pepped up by this big speech by Trump. And they really worked up, and they had a completely wrong understanding about what Congress was doing. They marched to Congress thinking that Congress was meeting to examine whether there was fraud in the electoral process. That is not, they were not doing that. They don't have the right, they have the wrong body to do that. That is for the Supreme Court to do, and the judicial process. The Congress is the legislative body, and they can't even examine the fraud in a judicial way. It's not their job. They just can't do that. They could pass a law. They could start a commission or something. They could start the process of a legal process to do that. And some of the people who are doing the approval who were objecting were had that aim in mind to get together a commission that would look into electoral fraud. But this didn't happen. But they can't do that themselves. And there's no way that Pence could come to any kind of judicial decision about electoral fraud, because that's not his job. He's in the wrong branch of government to do that. He's in the branch of government that just enacts laws. And it's the judicial branch that looks into whether these laws, whether the process that has happened has been legal. So that was complete. Trump, all the way through his term in office as president, he has shown a very, very hazy, vague understanding of the Constitution. So I don't think Trump, to this day, really understands what it means to be a US president, and he doesn't really understand the US Constitution. I don't think he's playing dumb. I think he literally has not given the amount of study needed to even have a very beginning idea of how the US Constitution works. I don't think he really understands the separation of powers. I don't think he really understands the difference between Congress and the Supreme Court and the President and the executive branch. He thinks of it all as being like a big business and himself as the CEO. I think that's some kind of analogy like that. He just has never made the change of mindset to truly understand how the US Constitution works. So it's either that, or you say that he's being deliberately, and I don't think it's deliberate. That would be a worse interpretation to think he's doing this deliberately. I don't think he's doing it deliberately. I think he just doesn't understand it. I think he's never understood the US Constitution. Which is an extraordinary thing to say about the president, but I think it's true. And so now another thing that people were bringing up, and because of course he has no background as a politician. This is a rather unusual thing, which we in the United Kingdom find quite strange, because in the United Kingdom our Prime Minister, now I'm in the United Kingdom in case you didn't know, in the United Kingdom our Prime Minister is just the leader of the party that he's in, and it's the party that gets elected, and then whichever party or parties, if it's a coalition, that have the majority in Parliament, then the leader of that party then becomes the Prime Minister. And so the Prime Minister has to be voted in by the general public as part of his party. He has a particular seat, so people in that seat vote him in. So it's very different for the presidential process. For a US president, a US president doesn't have to be a politician. Anyone can go and can actually get their name on the ballot to become a US president. And there are certain conditions, but they often start off with lots and lots of people who want to become US presidents, but they just don't. It's just a notional thing. There's no way they've got any chance. And not even necessarily belong to any particular party. I don't know very much about how it works, but I know that the US president, he doesn't. In order to successfully become a US president, you have a lot of finance behind you, which you have to get in some way. But you don't either from involving one of the parties or independent wealth, and in order to pay for all the ads and things like that. But you have no need to have any previous political experience, and Trump didn't have that experience, and that is partly why he's so hazy on the US Constitution, I think, because his background is in business and not in politics. So then the last thing I want to talk about, let's find out where it is on the page. You can read this up. So yes, so the people saying that these people are Antifa, and that they're just disguising themselves as Trump supporters. That's absolute nonsense. There's no way that someone from Antifa, who's an anti-fascist group, would march through the Capitol waving a Confederate flag. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. They just would not pretend to be Trump supporters to that extent. And what's more, quite a few of these people already are being identified. They know the actual individuals, and they are white supremacists, just as they seem to be. So now, so yeah, where's the bit about his? I've skipped past it. Let's see if I can find it again. I'm looking for what's happened to the Twitter accounts. So, because this is a little bit that I think, yes, here we are, social media accounts have been blocked. So, I watched, so again, you get people saying that all he did was denounce the violence and to say that it should be a peaceful protest and they should go home. He didn't do that. I didn't read the tweets, but I watched one of the tweets was a video. And so I watched that video while it was still up. And in that, he said, that is the one that I've got the transcript of that I just shared earlier in this video, and I read out just a short bit of it. But there's nothing in that about denouncing the actions at all. Indeed, the opposite. As I said, let's bring it up again further down. Sorry about all this scrolling around. And I'll go back and finish the story if I go down here. Yes, so there's nothing in that about denouncing them. In a part of the speech where you'd expect him to denounce them, he said, "We love you. You've been very special," and all that. I read that out before. So he did not denounce them in that speech. He did ask them to go home, but he said, and to be peaceful and to go home, but he also said that the election has been stolen and meant all these false claims, which are false in the sense they have not been legally established. There's a legal process of he should provide evidence for such a serious allegation, and then the evidence needs to be examined by justices, and they have just never produced evidence that stands up to legal scrutiny. So he shouldn't make such a serious allegation without any evidence, and that's the sense in which it's false. So anyway, so that's but then this saying that we love you and you've been very special to people who have just stormed the Capitol and carrying Confederate flags and wearing Nazi shirts is just not acceptable. And this is why, and it's not a legal process, this is why the social media have taken it down. It just took one step too far. So they have a special policy in Twitter that for world leaders, that the world leaders are special exemptions. They are a private company. It's nothing to do with law. It's the terms and conditions that everyone signs in order when they join Twitter. So when Trump joined Twitter, he signed the terms and conditions of Twitter, which include not doing things like this. So and then what happened is that they have special exemptions for world leaders, that they don't take down their tweets if they're of great political importance. They leave them up. So a tweet of the President of the United States, you only take down in very extraordinary situations. But at this point, it crossed that threshold where even though he's a world leader, they still left it up. They still took it down. I mean, not only just took it down, they actually stopped him from tweeting for 12 hours. And then he can only restore his Twitter account if he himself deletes those 3 videos himself, or those 3 tweets. One was a video. I don't know what the others were because I didn't read them. And so that's the situation he's in. But not only that, Facebook and Instagram, they both give 24-hour blocks, and YouTube took down the video, which they always do for once it spread misinformation about the electoral process and misinformation about the election, serious misinformation. So that's what the block is about. It's private companies imposing their terms of service. It is not anything to do with the US judicial process. And it's really quite extraordinary, the situation we are in, where so much depends on private companies enforcing terms and conditions, terms of service, and the exact text of how the terms of service have been written. But that's the situation we're in. And when he took out a Twitter account, he signed this agreement not to do this. And then he's broken that agreement that he made when he joined and created his Twitter account. And so that's why he's been suspended. And so the special exemption for world leaders that Twitter have clarified, that ends on the 20th of January. So after 20th of January, many of the things that Trump tweets on Twitter, even if he retains his Twitter account, then he just won't be able to tweet anymore because he no longer has his special exemption. He will be in the same situation as anyone else who makes those tweets, and that is that there's this process which leads eventually to you being banned completely from the Twitter platform by doing that. So that people are talking about how what's Trump going to do after he's ceased as president, and he may well continue. There's talks about him maybe trying to start a TV show, for instance, or start a TV channel. But one thing he won't be able to do is write these incendiary tweets anymore. And that's been a big part of how he has functioned, all the tweets he's done. So he will still be able to do tweets if he keeps them very muted down. He doesn't try to do anything to go against the terms and conditions of the Twitter terms of service. But that will lead to a kind of muffled, muted Trump, because an awful lot of the way that he has developed his presence and developed his Twitter following is by making these very incendiary tweets from time to time. And as well as that, of course, when he's not president anymore, then while he was president, he could make a tweet and then the stock market would crash, or he would suddenly drop 10 points or something, depending on what he tweeted. But this, or rise, it would cause instant effects, because his tweets were of someone who can change US policy, especially US foreign policy, which is almost entirely within the president has a huge amount of leeway in US foreign policy. He can do many things just unilaterally, just by himself. So he would just tweet something, and then say and then the world would be reacting to that, because they are immediately impacted by whatever he does. But once he's no longer president, his tweets won't have that power anymore, and he will go back to, he'll become an ex-president. And ex-presidents do appear on the television time, like we've had Obama a few times, we've had Bush a few times as the only ex-president, ex-Republican president, living ex-Republican president. He's been on a few times, but he doesn't have a very huge presence, not like Trump does. So it's pretty clear that after the inauguration on the 20th of January, that Trump, he will still be there, and he'll probably be very influential for a diminished group, because I think his actions yesterday will significantly diminish. There will be some people who are still very, very strong supporters. There's some in our group in Facebook who are still very strong supporters. They still very strongly believe in what Trump represented. They're still very strongly behind him. It doesn't mean they support people carrying Confederate flags or Nazi shirts walking through Capitol, but they still support the Trump project, as it were. So this is likely to continue once Biden is president, but it will be significantly reduced, the number, because there will be a lot of people who just got so turned off by what happened yesterday, they just will feel, especially since he didn't condemn it and didn't say that they'd done anything wrong, and didn't didn't denounce them. He didn't even say a mild, you shouldn't really have done that. He actually embraced it and said this is a good thing to do. So for many people in the United States, that is just too far. And many of the Republicans, and even if it impacts on their future career, because they don't have the support of that somewhat diminished core of Trump supporters, and even if it impacts on their elections in the future, it's just gone too far, because for them the Constitution is much higher. And no matter what the shenanigans as politicians, generally most politicians in the United States regard democracy, the process of law, and the Constitution as they rank that much higher than their own personal ambitions. So they, if it comes to the point that you go against the Constitution, and or whether you get re-elected, there are not many politicians who are going to say, well, I will go against the Constitution in order to be re-elected. And then with that kind of critical mass of a very large number of Republicans now all behind and just saying that's wrong, then there's just no way going into the future that he's going to be such a strong president as he would have been if he hadn't done what he did yesterday. So he's definitely significantly diminished compared to what he could have been after Joe Biden is elected. He's still going to be there. He's still likely to be a huge presence, but a diminished huge presence without Twitter, possibly even without Twitter at all, or diminished Twitter, and with greatly diminished influence on the Republican Party. He may even have to set up his own separate party or something, because many Republicans just won't want to be associated with him anymore. And Pence has broken with him, Mitch McConnell has broken with him, and many other Republicans have broken with him. They just can't support this. And it doesn't seem likely that Trump will come around and denounce what happened yesterday. So it seems like this split is just going to continue into the future, because without doing that, there's a moment in time when they split. It was just too far, and there's just no way that they could continue along the same path with Trump after what happened yesterday. So, and without him making a very major saying, I was wrong, this was a mistake, I'm sorry, these people shouldn't have done that. And it seems unlikely with his character that he's going to do that. So it's going to depart like that. And so he's heading off with a diminished group of people who follow him. And then we don't know what's going to happen then. Maybe they'll form another party, or we'll just have to see what happens. So anyway, that's the situation that we're in. I hope I've given a reasonably fair description of what happened. And so if you've got kind of scared about it, then just to say it's over. And if you're scared about what else Trump might do in the future, then the cabinet and Pence are reasonably clued up people, and they will be evaluating it very carefully, and they will be thinking, is it possible that Trump could do something else like this? Has it reached that level of concern where we need to remove him from office? And it doesn't necessarily have to be today, but if at any time over the next 12 days it reaches that level of concern, then this is something they can do very quickly. They can immediately remove him from office by meeting together, and then if 13 of them agree, then go to Congress. After that, he no longer has any presidential powers. And then some people are worrying about that Trump could use nuclear weapons. No, he can't. I've talked about this before, so I don't want to go into it in great detail, but it's not a literal button. He has never been a warlike president anyway, and that's one good thing about him. He said right at the beginning he's not going to be involved in major wars. He was not involved in any major war, or anything even remotely like a major war. And so whatever reason, even if you're very cynical, he comes as a businessman and not in a business in the military, in a business associated with hotels and golf courses. And so businessmen like that don't go for wars. I mean, apart from anything else, a war is not good for your golf course. So, but he's never given any impression of being the sort of person who wants to start wars. And he's done lots of very strange things in terms of diplomacy, but and he sort of seemed to be threatening it, but he never goes over that line. And anyway, there's nothing he can do in these next 12 days. Every other country will, if he does something erratic, they'll just say, well, that's Trump, we'll just have to see what Biden does. If he says makes some dramatic, strange diplomatic thing. And the thing is that Trump is not a general. No president is a general. Trump doesn't order military officers. No, Trump does. He'll order a general, but not the lower echelon in the military. And then the general, that's the only way that he can do anything military. There's no little button. Trump can't do anything of any military nature except by ordering a general to do that in any foreign country. And there's a slightly different process if he needs to involve the Insurrection Act in this country, in the United States. But so he can't just order a fighter jet to go and do something. He would order a general who would then order the fighter jet to do something. The general is bound by the four principles of international warfare, legal principles of international legal process of armed warfare, armed conduct, and this involves, in particular, not saying anything that risks excessive harm to civilians, and not proportionate to the military aim. It always has to have a military aim. So there's no way that randomly dropping a nuclear bomb on someone is going to have a military aim that makes any sense. And there's no way it's going to be disproportionate. There's no way it's going to be have casualties that are proportionate to the military aim, which would be no military aim. So there is no way that this is going to happen. And then the generals, in the same way as everyone else, doesn't want a war to start. They wouldn't want a war between the United States and Russia or something like that. So there is absolutely no way that Trump is going to do anything of that sort. So I just say that because a few people, and even mentioned on the news and saying, people buy, he's got a nuclear button. He hasn't. He hasn't got a nuclear button. He's got a telephone line, and he's got this kind of box thing, this suitcase thing. When he opens it, he gets some codes that he can. It involves something in his own memory plus what's written on the paper, and then combined together, he then uses that just to authenticate himself. So he speaks to the general, and the general from the codes knows it's not a Trump impersonator, it's the real Trump. And so then Trump then can give them orders, and then the general will say, okay, you want to drop a nuclear bomb on in the middle of the Pacific. Why do you want to do that? What's the military purpose? I'm deliberately choosing somewhere harmless, and just so as to not scare people. But and then they'd say, what's the military purpose? Why did you want to drop a bomb in the middle of the ocean? And that's against the and then Trump will have to say what his military purpose is, and then they will say, and the legal the consequences of that. Then have you thought through that legally? How does this impact on the law of armed conduct? And then Trump would have to give his legal justification for it. And then if it's not one of the playbook scenarios, then the general would say, that doesn't make sense. You just said that your legal justification is to frighten some fish in the Pacific or something. I'm just making up something silly. And Trump says, well, I believe that's a sensible reason to do it. And they say, well, get your lawyers on this. And then the Trump's lawyers will try to argue that there's a legal justification for dropping a nuclear bomb just to frighten some fish. So I'm just making that up to be silly, so as not scare people. But and then the general's lawyers will say, how do you get to that point of view? And then in this case, obviously they wouldn't succeed, and then it gets kicked down to Congress. So Congress then decides the thing. If the President and the general talking to each other, and the legal process doesn't come to any, they can't sort it out. no way that that's going to happen. So don't worry about that. Trump's not going to do anything. He can't do anything legally silly because he's not a general, and he can order a general, but the general is going to refuse. If you become a 5-star general, then you're not going to be someone who's shy about refusing to. Indeed, it's drilled into them all the way through that it doesn't matter who your commanding officer is, even if you're being commanded by, or you're commanding, who's commanding you, even if it's the president. If the president asks you to do something, you're still responsible for whatever you do. You can't devolve responsibility to the person who ordered you. That is drilled into soldiers right from when they first start their career as an officer, as a soldier, that whatever you do, you are responsible. And you can't devolve the responsibility for what you do just because someone else ordered you to do it. So the general would think about that, would see it like that too. And he would say, okay, you ordered me to do that, but I'm responsible for actually doing it. So explain to me how it's legally justified, how it's not a war crime basically. And so he has to explain that. So that's not going to happen. So anyway, I'll put a link to this in the video description, and I will put a link also, since I started talking about nuclear war, I'm going to put a link to the thing about how the Trump doesn't have a literal button. I've got a whole long article about that, which I go into a great deal more detail than I have just now. So since I started talking about it, I'll add that to the video description as well. So anyway, hopefully that helps some of you who've been a bit scared. Hopefully it's all a bit clearer exactly what happened and why, and with the background to it and the context. And so anyway, and just to shout out for our group on Facebook, Doomsday Debunked, both if you are good at fact checking, if you're very knowledgeable about some particular area, and you've got a bit of time to help the scared people, then we have this group on Facebook called Doomsday Debunked. But it's not just, it includes fake doomsday stories like asteroid impacts that are just made up, and it's not true at all. And it includes like false prophets that keep saying over and over again that Jesus is going to return, and he never does, and all these things like that. But they make it really scared. They scare Christian people into thinking it's something very scary. And it's all very sad. Anyway, I'm not going to get involved in that. But we help anyone who's scared of anything doomsday-like, but also even more generally, if they've been there for a while, especially, then all sorts of fears come up, and we help scared people, and that's basically what we do. And generally with fact-checking the stories, the infodemic basically, most of what we do is fact-checking the infodemic of totally fake, false news, and especially scary stories. And so here I've been fact-checking and some very scary, totally false things that people are circulating on social media, and misunderstandings, and sometimes the journalists themselves. And so anyway, if you are good at this sort of thing, then you're very welcome. If you're also good at supporting people who get scared, and we're not a group of therapists, but we do. A lot of our members are receiving therapy because they are in very extreme PTSD sometimes from the news stories, diagnosed PTSD, diagnosed by psychologists. So we are extra support for these people. But we're not offering therapy. But we sometimes you'll give them help to find therapists. And if you are used to working with very scared people, again, that's also very helpful in our group as well. Anyone who's scared. So shout out for our group to join. Do be sure to before you post there. We have these rules at the head of the group that help to pin to the head of the group to help it to run smoothly. You don't need to read them if you're just going to be reading the group, but to have some idea of the rules before you post is a good idea. Just usual kind of things, but some very specific things due to the nature of the group and the nature of the members of the group. And the sort of things that get scared. For instance, one very simple thing is that we are not mentioning future dates unless it's one they'll already know. There's some reason to actually mention it, because many people, they get a fixation on dates. future dates for scary things, if it's especially if it's a fake story. So anyway, I just you can read the rules. They all explain themselves. Do ask us if you've got any questions about the rules. Me and the moderators of Doomsday Debunked. I'll upload this now. Hope we find it helpful, some of you.